Welcome everybody, it's Kokorin TCG, and today I'll be going over my OTT Tsukiomi deck list. I just want to say that I love this deck, and while I think it does struggle against cross-right numbers, it's the deck that I learned Vanguard Zero with. The Tsukiomi set was the set that was happening when I first started, so I remember re-rolling for I think 2 or almost 3 days, just trying to high roll my account into getting 2 Tsukiomis off the start so I could really maximize my chance of being able to play this deck. And I really like Tsukiomi specifically because it allows me to configure my stack in a way where I can hit the triggers when I need the triggers, and it's one of the few decks that I feel can really contend with the MLBs, the Kageros, the Shadows, the Golds, just because while it may not be as good as those decks, I feel like it has a lot of strengths in the sense that if it needs to hit a trigger, you can hit a trigger. And also you get to draw into your PGs. In general, Counterblast 2 to draw 2 cards is an extremely strong skill. And while I feel like you don't always end up using it right away, it's always nice to have on hand. And so for my list, I play 5 draw, 4 stand, and 4 heal. There's a lot of different trigger lineups you can choose for OTT, and I think depending on how you play your trigger lineup, it can really help complement your playstyle. But for me, I personally prefer more draws over stands because it's a better defensive trigger, and I don't really deck out too often playing 5 draw. I feel like once you play more than 5 draw, you do start to deck out, and there's a lot of other countermeasures that you have to do to make sure that you don't deck out, because once you play over 5 draw, you really start to thin your deck a lot faster than you think. So I feel like 5 was a nice sweet spot, and then I play 4 stand just because it's a great offensive trigger, and it works really well with Tom, unlike crits where I'll hit into my opponent's PG. Because you have Silent Tom in OTT, you don't really need to hit into PGs, and you can kind of ignore them. So I personally feel that stand triggers are the optimal offensive trigger for OTT. And so in the grade 1s, I play 4 PG and 4 of the grade 1 Tsukiomi just because it's mandatory. And then in the remaining slots, I've opted to play 3 Blue Eye because filtering is really strong. And while I was testing it at 2 and 1 and 4, I feel like 3 was just the right sweet spot where I drew it when I needed it, but it wasn't constantly in my hand because there's other grade 1s that you do want to play, like the last 2 slots in my grade 1s. The 8k Vanilla, which is an extremely convenient card for Tom because when you're pushing your opponent from 4 to 6 damage, it allows you to hit 11k base Vanguards on that second hit with Tom, and especially if you're hitting a trigger with it as well, it can be really strong. And also, because of the limit break meta, you see a lot of self-damagers from Gold Paladins. Sometimes your Narukami sometimes play them, and then your Angel Feathers definitely play them, and Tom can kind of push into those 8Ks, and then you can use your stand triggers to kind of set up your Tom turn that way, which is kind of cool. In the grade 2s, I only play 3 Silent Tom because I didn't want to craft anymore for OTT. And I feel like for this list specifically, 3 is the perfect number. It is an 8k base intercept, so it's not the strongest, and you really want to use Tom for your final turn push to push them the game and get over their PGs. And I do find that occasionally you do have to play it on your rear guard column early if you don't have much else going on with your hand, but overall 3 Tom is perfectly fine and allows you to play other cards. I play 2 of the 10k Vanilla because it's a great defensive card, and in the case that I manage to miss all of my Toms, it helps me play around PGs because it forces them to play more cards to get rid of it. I play 4 of the grade 2 Tsukiomi just because you have to, and then I play 4 of the Faithful Angel because filtering is really strong. I honestly feel like you don't need 4, but the extra one never hurt, and if you already are missing the right chain, it's probably not a good game for you anyways. But if you want to find a way to soul charge when you do miss your ride chain, I can recommend the grade 2 Red Eye as a replacement for the 4th Faithful Angel, and it'll allow you to fill your soul, and it's a pretty neat card. But overall, I like to have the 4 filters in the grade 2s. In the grade 3s, I play 4 of the grade 3 Tsukiomi for consistency purposes, and I have that on stands because I'm gonna end up riding it, and I don't need a stand as much as I may need my heals or draws. Overall, I don't really have any problems with it on stand, and I only ever really 1 to 2 stands per game. And then I play 2 Amaterasus, and I have those on draws just because I only have 2 Amaterasu. If I had 4, or if you have 4, I would recommend you playing your heals on your Amaterasu and then cutting down your gentle gem count. So that's just a recommendation if you happen to have the other triple rares that I am missing. And then I play 3 of the Secretary Angel on draw, and this is the grade 3 filter, so when it attacks I can draw a card and put 1 card on the bottom, and it's really strong for just making sure you hit your triggers when you need to, and or just setting up your stack how you want. The more filters you play in Tsukiomi, the easier it is to manipulate your deck, and so while you do lose a little bit of aggression as far as numbers go when you're building your columns, you do gain a lot in the fact that you may not even need those extra 1 to 2k that you can get from playing other cards and just filtering into PGs and then allowing your Tsukiomi to hit your triggers. And then I play 4 heal on Gentle Gem because you only ever really need 1, and I don't feel like you need to heal 4 times in a game. It happens, and if you do, you do, but it's a really strong card for OTT because it allows you to hit over cross ride numbers. That extra 3k is really big for Tom to push for game, and overall, just because I'm missing my Amas, I've opted to put this on the heel. But this is my list. I really like this list. It's not perfect, and I would say if you can play more Amas, definitely play more Amas, but there's so many other decks that I wanted to build. I kind of stopped when I had the bare minimum amount of Amaterasus that I knew I would need to play this deck. So let's get into a game, and hopefully I dodge the VP farmers. Because this was my first deck, I had to learn about all the different number managements and stack management, and so this really helped me understand how to track PGs and to track resources. And my hand is kind of terrible, but I'm just gonna put back this grade 3 and just go with it. I am a pen and pad player for OTT. I don't have an amazing memory, and I don't like looking at the log every 5 seconds. So I just look at the log and keep track of the stack that way. But there's multiple ways to keep track of the stack. But if you are going to play OTT, I do recommend that you keep track of your stack. I get a PG, and I get the grade 3 again. And there goes a grade 2. I'm going to ride this grade 1 Tsukiomi, and after I attack, I will look into the log and kind of check to see what I got going on there. I'm going to go ahead and push 1 damage, and I whiff a stand trigger. It happens, and that's a beautiful SP. And so now is a great time for me to take a look at the log. And so they're just setting up to try to push 2 damage this turn, which in general, Vanguard 0, you want to be rushing your opponent. And so I definitely agree with this play that they're doing here. Even if I hit the trigger, it just kind of happens. And I guess on the subject of whether or not you push damage or not with OTT, or do you damage deny an MLB, do you damage deny certain decks, if you can push the damage with OTT, I would definitely recommend that you push the damage. And there we go, I hit the grade 2. It's just not in a position to not try to push damage. The deck can be a little slow sometimes compared to other decks in the meta, and so sometimes you just have to go for it. With that being said, though, you do want to be mindful of your resources in your hand and kind of what's going on with your stack to determine if it's really beneficial for you to play those extra cards, play those extra grade 2s from your hand in the early turns. And then this is where I take a look at the stack again. And they rode into a 10k grade 3, which is always great to see. They rode into the Jean. And let me clear that out the way. Neo Nectar is actually one of my favorite clans. It's just a shame that it's just not good in Zero. Because I just love the nature theme going on. And I draw into the Tsukiomi, and I get the Tsukiomi. This is pretty nice. And let's take a look at that beautiful animation. It could be better. They gave so much love to the shadows and golds and like the MLB animation, and then you get that little rinky-dink animation for Tsukiomi. You hate to see it. So I know for sure I'm going to play this filter, and I'm going to check my stack first before I decide if I want to use the draw skill. I am on a timer, so I gotta be quick about it. So I've only seen 2 triggers so far from the stack, and that basically means that most of my triggers are on the top, which could end badly for me because I could end up drawing into more triggers, but I don't, and that's even better. I'll be able to filter the heal onto the bottom of the deck this turn, and I'll be able to push 2 damage, so then I'll have Tom turn for next turn. Hopefully. Okay, so we're gonna do that. And then I'm gonna push with the Tsukiomi first. Let's see what I got going on there. Grade 1 and a Tom, so I know I do have some triggers coming up. And then we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna filter off the heal, push him to 5. And as a rule of thumb, when you're filtering, in 90% of the time, you're going to put the heal first if you have a heal in your hand. Unless you know you want to use the Gentle Gem. But if your Gentle Gem isn't on the heal, then this doesn't quite apply to you. And they're missing the optimal grade 3 ride. So it's not a great day for my opponent. He's gonna... He gets the heal. You hate to see it. You hate to see it. Still got 2 more heals to go. 24 cards. But he's on a 10k base. So if I can really get a good board going next turn, it might be a good time to Tom before he starts hitting more heals. And so I'm just going to take a moment to reflect on my stack before I make any big plays. Okay, so I know I have 2 triggers in the deck, and I've played 6, and I have 2 in the hand, so that's 8, that's 10. So the top of my deck does have triggers, and I believe there should be a stand there, so I'm going to right skip. And here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to play this filter here. I'm going to play this Tom here and this filter. And then I'm going to try to push as much damage as possible. A whiffed heal is still plus 5k for my Silent Tom. I can't complain too much. And I get a stand trigger. And I guess I'll put that on the Tom. That's totally fine. And yeah, this should be game unless my opponent has something crazy going on. And then I'll put the stand on the bottom of the deck. And Tom pushes for game. And there's game.